Welcome to week 3, chapter on brain and behavior. We are going to explore the most vital organ of our body, which is the brain. We are going to take a tour of different parts of the brain and different functions of the brain. We have learned in biology that nervous system can be broadly classified as central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. You will see the peripheral nervous system carries information from different parts of the body to the nervous system and from nervous system to different parts, and it can be further classified into these sections. But central nervous system just comprises of the brain and the spinal cord. So you will see that central nervous system's main functioning is to direct mental and basic life processes. We will get into each of the brain sections, different parts and their functions in the following slides. I would suggest you just pause the video right now and click on the link on the screen, which would be also copied in the description below, and watch a brief video on the basics to get an idea of what brain looks like and what it does. Once you watched your video, you would have observed that human brain is complex. It's sophisticated, it's highly evolved and fragile. Having weight of approximately 3 pounds and about 2% of your body weight, it is made of more than 100 billion neurons. These neurons don't touch each other. They do not connect with each other, but they connect in a way where when one neuron gets the electric signal passed through it when a new information is processed, that moves and it's carried over by the other. So it's so fascinating to look at how these brain cells function. You will see the normal child, when the newborn baby's brain is imaged, we do see that there are so many more brain cells compared to that of an adult. Wondering why? The older you get, you don't really get to use all the brain cells. You don't make new connections constantly as much as you do when first you're learning different things. So the example I like to give is the way I lost a new language when I was a child because I did not use it. The language I learned first when I was born was a different language from my mother tongue. But because I did not get to use it more as I grew up, right now I hardly can remember anything in that language. So you may have examples that makes more sense to you as well, as in going to a new place and having no memory of going to the place before when you were a child. So that's one of the reasons why we always, as professors, ask you to learn something and do a lot of rehearsal and remember things many times, going back to it and relearning it, because only when you do that, you will form a memory of that. And you remember this, a brain constantly keeps changing its structure based on how much you learn. So learning is so important for your brain to be active. Alright, brain, we know that it's divided into sections, the left brain and the right brain. You will see that left brain functions are mainly more analytical, problem solving, and computative in nature, and right brain is mainly imagination, art, and feelings, and creativity. And there is a divide right here. So you will see that corpus callosum is the terminology of the divide, the thick band of nerve that actually connects the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. And we also know that the left part of your brain coordinates and controls the right part of your body, and so does the right brain and the right left part of your body. So when someone gets into an accident and finds it hard to move their right part of the body and has lost the ability to speak, we can make the assumption that the left part of the brain is affected because, say, the left part of the brain, because it coordinates the right side of your body, has lost its function, and a part of your left brain is the Broca's area, which is for speech. So probably that is affected, that part is affected, which is causing the speech impairment. So, such understanding helps us to know that it's not two brains separately, but there is a function, but they can also function without the other part, where each of that comes into play, like how you have players in a playground. One person can take the role of the other, but they would primarily do their own role. But if the person is injured, the other person can also fill in the gap. That's how our brain does too. And it's a myth to know that left-handers are creative, and that is a myth. It's not true. And it's a myth that we only use 10% of our brain. That's not true either. You will see in this link, you can pause and do the same, that a split brain experiment, which is also very interesting to watch. In readings, I've included these real life people examples where you can see how brain is so interesting, where it can function with just half of it being there. Interesting kids' life stories. Hopefully, you enjoy this week's reading. All right, the other part of this chapter we are entering into is the parts of the brain. Brain, and as a whole, when you look at it, you can divide that as forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Now, I'll start from explaining the hindbrain. Hindbrain primarily can be seen as comprising of pons and medulla oblongata and cerebellum, this part. So this part together, that which connects the brain and the spinal cord, this is the hindbrain. So you will see the functions of each of this here. It's so important for us to understand that movement, posture, balance is cerebellum. Pons is more to do with monitoring sleep, attention, and arousal. And medulla oblongata is with our vitals. Anytime you go to a doctor in an emergency, first thing they're going to check is your vitals. And the part of the brain that actually is important, it plays an important role in regulating the vitals is your medulla. Next is your midbrain. The midbrain is like a relaying information section of your brain, where the information that comes in through your sensory system, say your eyes or your ears, gets into the forebrain, has to pass through the midbrain to get into the hindbrain. So this part actually plays a role of relaying the information. When you see Parkinson's disease, you might have seen one of the characteristic feature is tremors. That is because there is some damage in the lower part of the brain, which is below the midbrain. So that when that part is affected, you will see tremors and involuntary shaking. When we talk about midbrain, it's important to understand this part of our brain without the cerebellum and taking the cerebellum out, only the hindbrain and the midbrain together is called brainstem. It's important because this is more important for our survival functioning. It's called reptilian brain because this is the brain that reptiles have. We have something more than that. That is what is the forebrain. The forebrain is the one that develops the last in our human brain. First we have hindbrain, midbrain, and then this kind of develops during, it's still not developed during your adolescence. So one of the tasks for this week would be to to talk to someone who has a teenager, and kind of help them see how an adult brain works differently from a teenager's brain, so that they get a perspective of why teenagers behave the way they do. Or you can even imagine, take this into your own context and see, why did you make some decisions in life when you were in middle school or high school? What made you do things without even thinking about the consequence? What was I thinking? When you say that, it just simply means that Well, you were not thinking because you did not have that ability to think that complex, because this part of your brain was not still formed as much. So what do we have to know about the forebrain? Forebrain, mainly think about it in two different aspects. One is the limbic system, this part, and the other one is the entire part, which is called the cerebral cortex. Cerebral cortex is this layer, the largest part of your body, which of your brain, which regulates like complex processes, sensations, and your motor control. The cerebral cortex or the cerebellum, and this limbic system is a combination of amygdala, and this part is amygdala, this part is hippocampus, and this is thalamus. Below thalamus is your hypothalamus, and you will see pituitary gland here. So why is thalamus important? It's like sensory switchboard. It is also named as relay station because you take in information, and the information that comes from sensory organs come here, and then thalamus is the one that actually decides where to send the information. It kind of sorts the information for you. And the hippocampus, this structure here, is for your memory. This is the memory seat of your body, where of your brain. When there is any damage to this part, that's when you cannot remember the next day, what happened the previous day, and you live each day as a new day. And then amygdala, this part is your a part of this part of the limbic system is responsible for emotions and feelings. So those functions together form your limbic system. And the part here below this thalamus is your hypothalamus, which controls your basic drive, like hunger and your thirst and sex or any kind of pleasurable instincts that you have. That control is through this hypothalamus. So this together forms a forebrain. You can see why in this example. I just wanted to include this because NFL players, researchers have found that they have high incidence of or reporting depression, dementia, and suicide. So when researchers were trying to find why is that high risk for these, it's because the cerebral cortex, which in the previous slide, this part of this brain, the major part, the outer layer that protects the inner parts, that is what actually comes in contact the with the ball hitting on you, or any injury. First, the part that actually gets injured is your cerebellum, the cerebral cortex. So that's why you see higher evidence of injury, and higher evidences of depression, dementia, and suicide in people who use a ball or are in contact sports. So you can pause the video right now and try to fill these blank spots to see if you have understood, if you followed right, and if you got it right. And if you paused it and you're resuming it back again, yes, this is amygdala, this is corpus hippocampus, this is corpus callosum, this is cerebellum, and this part is because this is thalamus, the below that is hypothalamus, and this part is cerebral cortex. So once you have that, you will see lobes. These are different lobes of our brain, and the front one is your frontal lobe. On top is your parietal. Frontal is mainly to do with receiving the information. Parietal is sensation, the sensory information it receives and sends to the body. And then you have occipital on the back, which is for your vision. And you have this temporal lobe on the side, close to your ears, which is for your auditory or your comprehension and language. So you can see how based on the lobes, you can see different functions of your brain in the slide. So how you have auditory here, vision here, sensation and voluntary movements here, and higher intellectual, the prefrontal part, where higher intellectual functioning occurs here. All right, so you also try to fill this, the red part. What is this red part? Try to fill this and see if you have got it right.